Hi, I'm Steve Ross, and if you've always wanted to play the guitar but thought it would be too frustrating or difficult, I know you're really going to like this tape. In the 20 years I've been playing professionally, I've taught hundreds of people to play, using tips and shortcuts that makes learning easy and simple without any knowledge of music whatsoever. Like most people, I first learned to play out of books, but it was very frustrating and very boring. That's why I devised this method whereby you can learn to play the guitar virtually overnight. Playing the guitar is great fun, but before we get started, let me show you a few different types of guitars that are used to play different styles. This is a nylon string guitar. This is often used for classical and flamenco playing. It has a nice warm sound to it and a nice small body. Now I want to show you a 12-string guitar. It's often used for folk music. Some people use it for a big rhythm sound that it gives you, and other people use it for the distinctive sound that you get when you pluck the strings singly. Now I want to show you the electric guitar, my personal favorite. It's got pickups to amplify the sound of the strings, and you also need an amplifier to get any really good sound out of it. And a lot of blues and rock people use it, and it sounds like this. No matter what style of music you want to play, you need to start with the basics. First, you need a guitar. 2 hands, preferably yours, a pick, a little patience, and imagination. The first thing you need to know is how to hold the guitar. Rest it on your right thigh, grab a hold of the neck with your left hand, and let your right hand drape like this. And remember, be comfortable. Now, the guitar is made up of several parts: the body, the bridge, the neck, the fingerboard, the nut, the tuning pegs, and the frets. Now, the frets are metal ridges that lay across the fingerboard. To play a note, you need to press the tips of your fingers just behind the frets in order to get a nice, clear sound. You don't want to lay your fingers on the frets because you'll get a muffled sound like this. Pressing between the frets with your fingertips gives you the clear sound you want, like this. There are also markings on the fingerboard. These are called inlays. The inlays help you find where you are on the guitar. The dots or position markers are in the same position as the inlays, but they're on the top of the neck. Again, both the inlays and the dots help you find where you are on the guitar. As I'm sure you've noticed, the guitar has 6 strings. Now, strings are usually sold in sets like this. The thickness of the string is called its gauge. I want you to use a light gauge string because you'll get started faster because it's easier to press down on the fingerboard. Now, the strings are numbered from 1 to 6, starting with the thinnest string, high E. The second string is B. Third string is G. Fourth string is D. Fifth string is A. And the sixth string is low E. The thinner the string, the higher the pitch. Before you play the guitar, you have to tune up. It's probably a good idea to tune up every time you play. Nothing sounds worse than an out-of-tune guitar. Now, there are several different ways to tune the guitar. You can use the corresponding notes of a piano or keyboard to tune up, as shown in this diagram. This is a pitch pipe. When blown, this instrument produces the same notes as the strings. You then use your ear to tune up to the pitch of the notes. But the best method that I found is the electronic guitar tuner. You just pluck the string and turn the tuning peg of the string until the needle is in the center. These are really handy and they make tuning your guitar really easy. They're not that expensive and I suggest that you get one. The last method we can use is called relative tuning, which means you ask your brother-in-law to do it. Just kidding. It means that we will tune the guitar to itself. Now I'm going to play the sixth string, and I want you to play your sixth string. If your guitar string sounds higher or lower than mine, turn the tuning peg slightly to adjust the sound until the two tones sound alike. Now put your index finger on the fifth fret of the sixth string, counting up the neck like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pick the low E string and the fifth or A string together. They should sound alike. If they don't, use the tuning peg to adjust the tone of the A string. Once they do, continue. Now pluck the A and D strings. They should sound alike. Pluck your D and G strings. They too should sound alike. To tune the next string, you need to move down a fret like this. The G and B strings should sound alike. Now finally move back to the fifth fret and tune the B and high E strings to sound alike. That's all there is to it. Don't worry if it takes a little time to tune your guitar at first, because matching the tones helps develop your ear training. And after a while, you'll become really good at it. It'll become easy for you. Now that your guitar is in tune, it's time to talk about basic right-hand techniques. The right hand controls the timing and volume of the notes played with the left hand. Now the pick is held between the thumb and forefinger with the point facing the strings. Your hand should be relaxed, open, or closed, whichever feels more comfortable. Remember to keep your wrist nice and loose. Now you can play the strings of the guitar using either downstrokes, which means away from you, towards the floor like this, or upstrokes, which means toward you like this. The down arrows on the screen indicate a downstroke, and an up arrow indicates an upstroke. It's not necessary to play all 6 strings on the upstroke. The first 3 or 4 is fine. Now I want you to play a simple pattern using 3 downstrokes, then 1 upstroke, like this. 2. Now repeat the pattern 3 times. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. Practice this, then we'll explore some other patterns a little later. Now that we've covered the basics, there's one more thing we need to know before we begin to play. Sometimes, instead of giving the number of the strings or frets we're playing, it's much easier to use a diagram or picture of the fingerboard. This is called tablature or a chord diagram. The horizontal lines represent the frets. The vertical lines represent the strings. The diamonds represent the inlays or position markers, and the numbered dots tell you what fingers to use. Tablature is usually shown vertically to save space. It was designed for guitarists who could not read standard musical notation. You'll find this tablature on most sheet music and in songbooks. Throughout the tape, we will use tablature to show left-hand fingering. Once you become familiar with it, you can play almost anything. Now it's time to play some music. This is a chord. A chord is 3 or more notes played together. To play many popular songs, you only need a few simple chords. Before we learn these chords, let's number the fingers of the left hand so you know which fingers to use. 1, 2, 3, 4. The first chord we're going to learn is the E chord. Place your thumb behind the neck like this. Place the first finger on the first fret of the 3rd string, like this. Then place your second finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string. Then your 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. Make sure your fingers are parallel to the frets, then press down and strum 1 string at a time. If it sounds like this, then curl your fingers so each finger only touches 1 string. If your nails are too long, you won't be able to press the strings all the way down. So remember, keep your nails short on your left hand. You'll probably also notice that the strings dig into your fingers and may be a little uncomfortable at first. But don't worry about it. The more you practice, the easier it'll get, and the faster you'll develop finger strength. Millions of people have done it, and so can you. Now let's learn another rhythm pattern. With your left hand holding the E chord, play 1 downstroke, then 1 upstroke, and repeat the pattern like this. Start slow and increase the speed a little faster each time until you can play it at this tempo. Remember, it's not necessary to strum all 6 strings on either stroke. Now that you can play an E chord, I'm going to show you 2 other chords using the same fingering, starting with the E chord, keeping the same finger position. Count up the neck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the 7th fret. Now strum. Then move your fingers up 2 more frets to the 9th fret and strum. I call this an E sequence. You can play the chords in any sequence you want, alternating the up and down strokes to create your own music, like this. The next chord we're going to learn is the A chord. Match your fingers to the chord diagram on the screen. Make sure your fingers are curled and you press down hard enough to get a nice clear tone. Starting with the low E, play one string at a time, and it should sound like this. Notice the position of my thumb. I'm using this part of my thumb to support my fingers. This allows you to play the chord much more easily. Now let's move on to the D chord. Again, match your finger positions to the tablature. Notice the small X above the low E string on the diagram. This indicates that the string is not to be played. Anytime you see a small O above the string, this means the string is to be played open. Now strum the D chord slowly. Now I'd like to show you two other chords using the same fingering. Starting with the D chord, keeping the same finger position, count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the 7th fret, then strum. Now move your fingers 2 more frets to the 9th fret and strum. I call this the D sequence. When playing this, don't play the low E string. You can play the chords in any sequence you want, alternating the up and down strokes. Take a few minutes now to practice this sequence. Thousands of popular songs are based on 3 chords. By linking the 3 chords we've already learned, E, A, and D, together, we can create what's known as a chord progression. Now to do this, we need to practice switching between the chords. Without strumming with the right hand, finger the chords and try to memorize the shapes of the chord. Slowly at first, start with the A chord. Then change to the D chord. Then the E chord. Then back to the D chord. Repeat it until you can change from chord to chord relatively easily. Now let's add the right hand. Using only downstrokes, play 2 downstrokes on each chord. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Experiment with these 3 chords and maybe even alternate between down and up strokes to create your own songs. Now let's learn some more chords. The next chord we're going to learn is the G chord. For years, the G chord has been taught in this position. But I've found that by changing the fingering slightly, it's easier to play this chord and additional chords by just adding a finger or two. So match your fingers to the tablature position on the screen and strum the G chord. Make sure it sounds clear like this. In this new finger position, let's add the index finger on the first fret of the second string. By adding this one finger, you are now playing a G suspended chord, or G sus. This chord has a raised or unfinished sound to it. Now, move the index finger to the first fret on the first string. Lift the little finger off altogether and play the chord. This chord is the G7th chord. Seventh chords are often used as transition chords. But before I show you what I mean, let's learn the C chord. Now the C chord is a little bit of a stretch. Again, be careful not to mute any of the open strings. It really helps if you place the thumb behind the center of the neck. Put these chords together and play a country folk progression. For this, we'll play the G chord, the G sus chord, the G7th chord, the C chord, and the D chord. The right hand will play downstrokes. Count them like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and so on. Watch the screen for the chord changes. Let's do this progression once together. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Let's take a time out now so you can practice this progression a few times. Now that you can play a few chords, I'd like to show you a little device that you can use to play the same chords in different positions up the neck. This is called a capo. The capo is placed on the neck of the guitar when you want to raise the pitch of the strings. It acts like the nut, except it's movable. Let me show you. If I play the chords E, A, and D, by placing the capo on the 3rd fret, I can play the same chords, but listen to the difference in the sound. The capo is a really handy thing to have, especially when you're trying to figure out songs. The next thing I'd like to show you is a basic rock progression. But before I do, I want to show you a right hand technique that's often used in rock and roll. Now to do this, you want to place the side of your hand on the strings just in front of the bridge. And when you strum, it creates a muffled sound. This technique is called damping. Using only downstrokes, it sounds pretty much like this. It's not necessary to hit all 6 strings. To play this rock progression, we'll abbreviate some of the same chords you already know and play them a little bit differently. Instead of playing the A chord with 3 fingers, I want you to play it with your first finger like this. Now, whenever you play it this way, make sure not to play the high E string. Just pick the 3rd, 4th, and 5th strings with the right hand, using the damping method you just learned. Now, using downstrokes only, it should sound like this. Now the D chord. Press the first finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. Now add the 2nd finger to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Now pick the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings like this. Lastly, the E chord. Place the first finger on the 2nd fret over both the 4th and 5th strings, picking only the 4th, 5th, and 6th strings. That's great. Now when we put it all together, it should sound like this. Now to really give this a rock feel, let's add our 3rd finger to each chord in the progression. Play the A chord, 1, 2. Keeping the index finger pressed down, now press the 3rd finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string, 3, 4. Then repeat like this. 1, 2, straight chord, 3, 4. You add on. It should sound like this. Now when you play the D chord, press the 3rd finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string using the same rhythm, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And for the E chord, the 3rd finger goes on the 4th fret of the 5th string, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's the entire progression. You should start slow and build your speed up gradually, because this progression is the basic building block of a lot of popular blues and rock tunes. It takes a little practice, but once you get it down, you'll be surprised how many different songs you can play. Well, that's about all the time we have. We've learned the basic building blocks of playing the guitar. You now know how to tune your guitar, read tablature, play basic chords and chord progressions. Now it's up to you to experiment, have some fun, and create your own sound.